down. We are going to jump into the press conference to talk about Duke City stat that you all were able to observe. And then after that, we will give an update to the homicide arrest that took place yesterday. So today you'll be hearing from Mayor Tim Keller, Chief Harold Medina, and Deputy Chief Cecily Barker. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mayor.
Well, good morning.
Daniel was he had a lot of pride in anything that he did. He was very meticulous about everything he did. He was very kind, he was very giving. He would stop and help anybody who needed help. He was a lovely person. He didn't deserve to lose his life at 35.
The homicide occurred on August 21st.
The administrative side of things and the IT side of things, because what you see here is the problem solving that can occur when we've done all the investments that you saw us use in our real-time crime center, in our shot spotter, in our investigative teams, even adding resources to our investigative units. So when we invest in those things, then it's like, hey, APD, you got to use them to actually get bad people off our streets. And that's what that's about. And so you see a combination of, I think first that crime fighting starts with internal communication, and even who is in the room, the mix of civilians, the mix of different departments is absolutely critical. It is so much different than reviewing statistics, as you saw this morning. This is about problem solving together across departments and even across agencies. And it's about using every tool that we have to be able to do that, especially the new technology and the new increase in numbers and investigators that we have. Now we're going to continue to use this method to highlight cases and identify especially repeat offenders and hotspot locations and crime trends, and we're going to allocate resources to combating that. For the first time in a long time, about 2 years ago, we have a fighting chance to do that because we've invested in those technologies, but also because our numbers continue to rise. We wish they would rise faster, but for every new cadet class, we see our total numbers go up, and we're able to add more officers to proactive crime fighting. Now, we also know that we have to coordinate our efforts, especially around repeat offenses, and to target violent crime, and also improve our response times. Those are the other components of Duke City stats. And so for us, this is actually something that we looked at best practices around the country. This first started with a visit from NYPD, actually. It was about 5 years ago when we had that. And that's when we identified that at least for the 10 years prior, the police department was not really problem solving with statistics. They were reviewing statistics. That was the first thing that we wanted to change, but we also knew that we had to get a bunch more relevant, timely, fast information. So we invest in the technology, we get the information, and now folks are actually trying to problem solve together. And that's why even things like the Edmonton Police Department and other departments are now coming and looking at us as sort of the latest and greatest when it comes to fighting crime each week, utilizing our crime statistics through our Duke City stats effort. So we're going to continue doing this, and it's bearing fruit. We see, of course, our major crime categories. I know they're coming down from 10 years of going up, but the fact that they're finally starting to turn the direction shows that we're gaining traction and that this is working. So with more on this, I'll hand it over to our Chief, Harold Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, for me, this started around 2009. In November of 2009, I was transferred from Field Services Bureau to Investigations to Property Crimes. And at the time, I was in charge of all property crimes for the city of Albuquerque as a lieutenant. And I was in charge of a program called the Top 5 program, where we looked at the top 5 offenders citywide. And we made a lot of changes back then in property crimes. And if you go back and you look, 2010 and 11 had great property crime rates because of the reason that we're very proactive and we changed a lot of the way we did things. But one thing that we never really accomplished was a great comp stat meeting where we were proactive on crime and, like Mayor said, not just reviewing crime. When I returned in 2017, 2018-19 timeframe, I got the chance to go to NYPD and see a version of their comp stats. I then recognized that one of the biggest things we had to do was we had to create a process where all the department was working together and sharing information. That information wasn't siloed anymore. And as the deputy chief, I started Duke City Stats, and we started working on field services, sharing more information. But I quickly saw that the other bureaus wouldn't work as well with us. And at the time, as a deputy chief, I didn't have the ability to make all the other bureaus work with me. We literally sat in this room and we asked the commander at the time how many homicides there was year for date, and they didn't have that number on the top of their head. We're at 9 right now compared to 19 last year. Just update everybody. The chief knows that number now every day. So some of the commanders had never gotten an update from investigations about homicides within their area command. So we started to change the culture. When I became chief in 2020, we started working, and we knew we had to increase our abilities at the Real-Time Crime Center. Over the past year, we've had some great leadership changes at the Real-Time Crime Center. We've brought in more expertise. We've brought in outside eyes. We also brought in a person from former NYPD that helped develop CompStat to teach our people how it's ran out in New York and to give us ideas. This all occurred, and somewhere about mid last year, I would say that we really started to hit the stride where we were focusing on incoming crime and really focusing on using our technology to pinpoint and know what crime was occurring and how to tackle it the best. So we will continue to move forward. Duke City Stat is ran by Deputy Chief Barker and Deputy Chief Vega. I purposely stay out of Duke City Stats because too many times when the chief's in the room, whatever the chief says, everybody agrees to. And having two equal rank deputy chiefs with their bureaus seems to get everybody working a little bit better together and more conversation rather than, well, the chief thought this, so we're all going to do it. But I always give usually an update to it at the beginning, and I get an update after Duke City Stats from the deputy chiefs. And I keep track of numbers each week to make sure that what we're doing is working. And just an example of where we are year to date. Violent crimes of interest in 2024, at this point in time, we're at 838. Aggravated assaults this year, we're at 716. That is down 15% year to date. Sex crimes is down 25%. Robbery down 36%. Our violent crimes of interest, as I call, are down a total of 19%. Homicide, I mentioned it earlier, like this year we're at 9. Last year at this time we were at 19. Auto theft down 43%. Auto burglary down 40%. Overall, the crimes that we watch the most on the property crime side, burglaries, auto burgs, residential, commercial, shoplifting, auto theft are combined 43% down for the year. And we know that we keep track that our felony arrests this year, year to date, are up 12%. And even our felony warrants are up an additional 2%. That's followed by 25 and 29% increases in felony warrants the previous 2 years. So we keep track of these numbers to make sure that we keep improving in the areas we need to see more proactive work, and we address those when it's not as high as we want. But we also put people into jail that we think are drivers in crimes. And what's one thing they do is they have a top 5 list of current offenders within the city, and Deputy Chief Barker will be able to talk about one of them. When we were able to remove one of these individuals from the Foothills Area Command, we quickly saw the impact they had on crime and how crime dropped within that area command. So we have a lot of progress going forward. This is about us focusing on the right offenders, putting resources in the right parts of town, and making sure that if we put bait cars somewhere, cars are being stolen there at a larger rate than somewhere else. So with data, we justify why we have more resources in different places of the city. And I'm going to turn it over to Cecily for more information on that.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Cecily Barker, and I'm the Deputy Chief over the Field Services Bureau. And so I know Mayor and Chief really went over what we do in Duke City Stat, but for those of you who weren't here just for the media presentation that we had and went over, I just want to do a brief overview of like what the meetings look like. And so we really focus on 4 components, and that's what you're going to see if you look up any information on CompStat. So like Mayor said, this started in New York. I was also able to go to New York with DC Vega and learn the way they do things, but what we've really done is brought that back to Albuquerque and done what works for us for Duke City Stat. So those 4 components that I'm talking about are timely and accurate information and intelligence, rapid deployment of resources, effective tactics, and relentless follow-up. For our department, that really comes down to a culture change. I know Chief talked about it briefly, but there was silos in our department, and the information sharing wasn't there. When I was a commander in the Northwest Area Command, I remember coming into Duke City Stat, and the commander who ran it at the time did a very good job of showing us the data and the trends, and we would talk about that. DC Vega and I have taken that a step further. The analysts that you see sitting here and our professional staff really do a lot of hard work behind the scenes to show us what's going on. And I will tell you that they know the trends that are happening in the city probably better than most of us. We take that information and we have our commanders tell us what they're going to do to address it. And we get a little bit into the weeds when it comes to the cases that we're talking about. The biggest culture shift and change for us was accountability. We don't just leave the meeting and forget about the case that we talked about. We expect our commanders to come back and tell us what they did the next week. And that's what Chief was talking about, the results that we've seen in cases where we are arresting drivers of crime. The cases that we talk about in here tend to be or include the same people, whether that be a juvenile or an adult. And so we talk about, okay, what do we need to do now? Let's get with the district attorney's office. What can we do to keep this person in jail? And I do think that has really reflected in our crime trends going down. And another thing, like when we're talking about culture, is just the bolos that we put out. I think I mentioned it in our Duke City earlier. We went from January of last year when we started pushing our detectives to put this out with 16 bolos a month, which is not very much, and that's just information sharing between our department. I think the highest month that we had was 73 last year. So that's a huge shift for us. We also work with DC Vega's team. If our commanders and our officers aren't able to locate either the person or the vehicle, the information put out in a bolo, we give them about 2 days, and then we put that information out to the media because we know how important it is to communicate what's going on in the city with you all, and we get a lot of Crime Stopper tips for that. So before I finish, I again just want to take the time to thank our analysts. They are the true heroes behind Duke City Stat. The information that they provide to us is imperative, and then the work by the detectives and the officers to prevent and reduce crime within our city.
You know, and I'm just going to finish with a little bit of what Cecily was talking about teamwork. We invested in our real-time crime center. We invested in our professional staff. We really look at it as a two-headed spear fighting crime. You know, we have the bridge, which gives real-time updates to the officers, and we have the analysts who have done a miraculous job in providing us data and putting it together. And not only just raw data, they find a meaning behind it through their problem-solving skills. And then it goes on through to commanders who believe in the mission that they're doing. They push it down to their people, and they have accountability to their people. And in the end, it ends up with our officers who are hardworking and motivated. And many times I get asked, how do you know the department has good morale? And one way is we have constant communication with them and have a chief's breakfast each month where they're very honest. And in the past, they told us how horrible it was working here because of a lot of the things that were going on with our settlement agreement. But as we've moved forward, we've seen how that morale has shifted. And at the same time, we see the increase in arrests. And these increase in arrests is attributed a lot to the teamwork and the high morale of our officers who are out there every day doing something to make this city better. So to everybody, I just want to say thank you because you make it very easy for a chief, a mayor, anybody to stand up here and give praise for all of the great work that you all are accomplishing each and every day. So thank you guys. Any questions?
Let's go ahead and take questions in regards to Duke City Stat, and then we'll go into the homicide arrest update. Questions on Duke City?
Yeah, you guys talked a lot about sharing information with the public. Do you want to talk a little bit about why that's so important to you to start sharing those bolos with the media as opposed to kind of keeping it close to the investigation and wanting those Crime Stopper tips to come?
I could tell you the first big fight on this, the homicides in the Muslim community. I remember investigations coming to me. Commander Vega was there, and he told me, we have a Crime Stoppers tip on a car, and we're going to be looking for the car. And I asked him, can we release it? And investigations about died. They're like, Chief, can't release that car. And I told him, you have 24 hours or I'm releasing it. Because I knew the public had more eyes out there, and that somebody would recognize that car and give us the information we need based off that. And as soon as we released that 24 hours later, we had that case solved. And time again, we find ourselves having that same conversation, We had that conversation with the 11-year-old that was murdered outside Isotope Stadium. And time again, our people have learned that releasing this to the public enables all of the public to help us solve this crime. So many people out there have an instinct of who may be doing something wrong, and they have a piece of the puzzle that sometimes we don't have, and they help us complete that puzzle by providing us that information. Any other questions? For Spanish-speaking states, es muy importante que nosotros podemos hacer cierto que nosotros estamos mandando oficiales para las partes de Albuquerque donde hay muchas cosas que están pasando y que nosotros podemos llevar personas para la cárcel por las cosas que están haciendo en esos lugares porque hacen Albuquerque a más bueno lugar a vivir. Thank you, guys.
Mayor,
Good.
on the homicide update, did you want to? Chief, okay.
You know, on Friday, I was notified that we had a potential homicide that went undiscovered in 2024 that originally it came in as a possible traffic fatality. I was told that the individual involved was an 11-year-old that we had dealt with in the past, last May, June. We dealt with an 11-year-old that we were unable to book on a series of violent crimes, and we had to work and get this person into CYFD custody, and it took its process. A video was discovered. We will be releasing the video later today. Yesterday, we took Jonathan Overbay into custody, 13 years old, in relation to that video and the homicide that occurred. The homicide victim was Scott Habermill, employee of Sandia National Labs, who initially we thought had just been run over and it was a traffic accident. At this time, we asked for respect for the family. The family is dealing with a whole different dynamic right now. The video we will be releasing later is extremely disturbing. We've all looked at it and it is just horrific that this could be done to another human being. We are going to be asking the public to help us locate 2 other juveniles that are related to this case, and their information will be on the press release sent out by APD. One, the 11-year-old from last year, is now turned to 12 years old and is listed as a runaway, and 15-year-old will also be looking for information to get them into custody. And this is just another example of, you know, what we're dealing with as law enforcement is dealing with these younger and younger kids that are getting involved in serious crime. In the video, you'll notice that the individual that we believe is 11 at the time is armed with a firearm, and you hear the discussion of, they see the guy on the bike and they make the decision that they're going to strike him. They're just going to bump him. And they murdered this individual, and we need to continue to work as a community to ensure that we're doing everything we can to steer kids in the right direction, and that we're doing everything we can to make sure that everybody's given the resources they need and we're able to help people along the way. So we will do our part, which is investigate this crime. We will arrest or identify in some cases, because we are unable to book this 12-year-old into a correctional facility because of his age. And we will work to get this individual to the help that they need. And we will turn in and submit a case to the district attorney's office. And at that point, we hope that the rest of the system is able to deal with this individuals and make sure there's consequences for what they have done, and make sure that they're rehabilitated if it's possible. I think that it's important that we give the family some space right now and a little bit of privacy. They, in a way, suffered the first time, feeling that this individual was the victim of a motor vehicle theft. Now, with the new information that's come out, I'm sure it ripped open new wounds. And like I said, the video is going to be tough for the community to watch and to see, but it is just a prime example of what our officers are dealing with day in and day out. And it is my fear that some of these younger individuals, if we can't get them the assistance they need and keep the community safe from them and them safe from themselves, we're either going to have another citizen killed, life taken, possibly somebody in law enforcement's life taken, or that individual is going to lose their life to law enforcement. All three are losses. All three will bring controversy of their own. So it is difficult situations that we're dealing with. We're being thoughtful. We're being as diligent as we can in building the strongest case, and we will be releasing more information when we're possible. Mayor, did you have anything you want to add on? Kyle?
Commander Kyle Hartsock with our Criminal Investigation Division, which includes our homicide unit. Our homicide unit got involved in this case just a few weeks ago. This case started May 29th of last year with our patrol officers responding to a hit-and-run accident involving a cyclist. The victim, Scott, was riding his bike with his helmet in a bike lane with the safety light on when he was struck by a car and the car left. No one actually saw the vehicle fleeing. Our traffic team did try to find any surveillance video or any other leads on the vehicle, but none were found, and the case was actually closed pending further leads. In February of this year, 2 different juveniles reported, one to their parent and one to their school official here in Albuquerque, that a video had been posted to Instagram showing 3 individuals in a car purposely running over a cyclist. The video was sent to law enforcement. Upon review by some different markers on the video, we discovered this was actually the May 29th hit-and-run accident, was completely photographed and captured. Our digital intelligence team worked with homicide detectives and identified all 3 subjects that were in the car that were planning to run over the cyclist on purpose, and then actually hit him and then fled around the corner, literally laughing about what they had just done as they fled. Late last week, we were able to get murder arrest warrants on 2 of them, a 15-year-old and now a 13-year-old. The other individual was 11 years old. He had just turned 11 actually the week before this hit and run. At the time, we're working with the DA's office still, but at this time, he's too young to charge with any crime. Only one of the individuals, Jonathan Overbay, is in custody. We're asking for the public's help to help find Will Garcia, or Will, I know you're watching this, just turn yourself in. And also to the 3rd child, who is listed as a missing person right now out of Torrance County. We also need you to contact your guardians or CYFD or police and come back into contact with your guardians. With that, I'll turn it over to Mayor.
You know, I think I want to begin first by expressing our deepest condolences to the family of Scott Habermel. As Chief mentioned, they are now having to go through the same trauma and grief again that they just went through. And before, this was an issue that we're familiar with, unfortunately, around hit and runs, pedestrian safety, these issues that we have in our community. This is something much, much worse. This is something unimaginable. This is something that is a senseless act of violence that is horrifying. And when you see this video, unfortunately, people will understand just how horrifying it is. You have children, and I want to emphasize an 11-year-old. I have an 11-year-old, and that's not a surprise to anyone. These are children with a gun, playing in a car, and then consciously deciding to hit and to kill Scott, and then laughing about it after it happened. This is something that they additionally recorded on purpose and then shared online. It's something that on the one hand is incredibly heartbreaking because of their age and how they're caught up in the cycle of violence. On the other hand, this is absolutely terrifying. You've got a combination of a weapon, in this case a vehicle, and youth, and a sort of motive about sharing this on social media. And they're talking about taking someone's life. This is what we're seeing in so many ways throughout our schools right now and throughout our community when it comes to the youth. This is why we have continued to say that our juvenile justice system is in desperate need of help in every way. And I know people are going to ask, the immediate question, of course, is who's responsible? Who's accountable for this? Where were the parents? Where was everyone else in the system? In general, these kids are runaways, they're dropouts, and they're youths. So we can't share all the details. We don't have the same law enforcement tools. But the bottom line is there are so many cracks that these kids fell through at every step of the way, right? They've only been on earth for 11 years. Think of what has happened to them in that span to now be a runaway and be in that situation. And think of the dozens of government agencies, or you name the entities that possibly could have done something. But also, given this situation, maybe we just were simply unable to save this 11-year-old soon enough before he led down this path. So this is something that our community has to face. And I think the first step is actually just acknowledging that this happens. This happens for 11-year-olds in our city. It happens all around the country too. And actually in this case, the real nexus is around Edgewood. It's actually in a different city where sort of guardians and domiciles are in the original case. So this is about the metro. This is about New Mexico. But this is about the children in our community and what they're dealing with right now. Now, I know at the end of the day, too, we've got to understand that there's challenges across the board, whether it's beds for officers and CYFD to take kids to, whether it's prosecutors, whether it's all the above. But at the end of the day, this has to be yet another commitment that every piece of the system has to do more. And I want to acknowledge APD is the one who actually tied this together, right? And caught one of these 3 individuals, and now we know what happened. We can at least tell the truth about what happened to Scott, and that's what we're doing here today. And that truth involves a truth we all have to hold ourselves accountable to, which is we each have a role to play. And in this case, there are dozens and dozens of ways, dozens of cracks that these children fell through. But that is never an excuse. We have to commit to do more, and all of us have to have an answer of what we think would improve this criminal justice system. And for us, we know that our first step is actually to catch these remaining 2 individuals. These children are murderers, and they have got to be in custody. Now, the criminal justice system has rules and everything on how to do that, but I know that has to be the case. And so we need everyone in the system and everyone in the community to help us find these folks and make sure that they're getting off the street. They're extremely dangerous. So that's what we're going to focus on in the very short term. And I think as we go forward, the last thing that we absolutely have to remember is the tragedy that is so profound that happened to Scott. This is something that affects families, colleagues, an entire community. I know he was a stand-up member of the Sandia Labs community, well accomplished and loved by folks in his community out in Corrales. These issues affect all of us. We know this. We know in our city that no one is immune from these issues. And whether it's a friend or family member or a child or the school that your children go to school at, that's why we all have to care about doing more for reforming and fixing and investing in our juvenile justice system. So with that, I think we can take some questions. I know there's a lot that we can't talk about. Gilbert or whoever, Chief, you want to?
You all have mentioned multiple times that this 11-year-old is too young to be charged, but for the viewer who doesn't understand why, can you explain that?
Yeah, there's basically legislation which prevents us from being able to charge this individual for a crime and to get them booked into a facility.
And these 3 boys, their ages 15, 13, and 11, are they related in any way, or are they just friends?
We believe they're just friends, and interestingly enough, right around this time last year, we started flagging him in Duke City Stat as being a driver of crime in the Foothills Area Command, and that's how they originally got on our radar, and we took him into custody the first time.
And do we know yet whose car and whose gun they belong to?
We do not know what happened with the gun. There's been a year, And I don't believe when we took him into custody, did he have a gun last time? No. So we know that. We don't know what has happened to the gun that will be in the video in the car. We are working on leads of the car, and they're trying to finalize some stuff to see, but they are working, and they believe they may have tracked the vehicle down. And if we are correct, it would have been a stolen motor vehicle.
What details can you share about when he was arrested and where was he on the gun? Was it in Torrance County, here in Bernalillo?
He was arrested in Bernalillo County last year, and we actually did some media about it last year, about the fact that we had such struggle getting this individual booked into a facility because of his age. I believe he had shot at an individual already, and it took us some time to get him into custody because we were very careful, given that it was an 11-year-old, and we knew the possible backlash if we did get involved in the use of force with this individual.
Last week, the Denver Police Department sent out a press release about some type of juvenile curfew that they have implemented, where it says that if the parents aren't responsible, failure to do so, they might receive like a warning, $100 fine, $500. Is that any idea that you guys might implement something similar, or?
You know, absolutely. Me holding parents accountable. You know, there are some parents that try their very best and their kids go down their own direction. Like, yes, there are some parental responsibilities, but at a certain point, you know, kids make their own decisions, and parents do the best that they can. It's not easy to be a parent, so no, I'm not interested in a curfew where I'm going to be fining parents.
Is the 11-year-old aware that you guys weren't, that there would be, the repercussions wouldn't be as easy for him because of his age?
Have no idea. Yeah, it's hard for me to speculate on that.
And you mentioned you're still looking for the 11-year-old. Even if you were to find him, could you technically detain him if he's not being charged for anything?
Yes, he is a runaway, and we are working to make a referral for him to get an evaluation.
And Mayor Keller said something about this person potentially being in Torrance County. What is the relation?
The individual has family members in Torrance County. That's the county that took his missing persons report.
With the social media post, it just surfaced in February. It seems to be like it was bragging about it, maybe. Do you want to talk about how worrisome that can be, just to see these kids not only recording the crimes, but then bragging about it months later, seemingly?
It's extremely disturbing. You know that you've killed a human being. I'm sure they saw the follow-up media the days after this. And to know that you would have the audacity to post, I just murdered this person. And looking at the video and seeing what you did and that you laughed about it, it just brings the level of how disconnected they are with society to the surface.
You guys mentioned that the video really helped you guys figure out what happened. Do you think if the video wasn't posted, it would have taken you guys longer?
If the video hadn't posted, that case probably would have gone unsolved, to be perfectly honest. We're looking at a motor vehicle crash, not a homicide.
Now that it's getting warmer, more people are going to be on their bikes. Do you have any fear that this is some sort of viral trend that youth are doing, or do you feel like the biking community is safe as it's going to start tomorrow?
You just never know. I mean, I would hope that people would see there's consequences. We will be keeping an eye out on our traffic fatalities with bicycles and seeing if we see any trends, and we will go from there. But, you know, we have great technology. We've said it before. A long time ago, you had a 50% chance of getting away with murder in Albuquerque, and right now, we've solved 250% of the murders. I mean, we solved almost every homicide from this year with the exception of maybe one, and we've solved several from last year. So we will continue to solve murder, and there are consequences.
What details can you share about the 15-year-old's arrest?
Juvenile probation and parole assisted us.
The 15-year-old is not.
Oh.
That's Will Garcia.
Oh,
We need him.
The
one who was
13-year-old.
arrested yesterday, sorry.
He was on juvenile probation from when we arrested him last year.
Oh,
And
I
so
see.
they assisted us in taking him into custody yesterday.
Gotcha. And is there any reason to believe that these three young people knew the victim?
No, there's no reason to believe it. It seems random.
Okay.
Just to clarify back to that, so he is arrested right now, or?
The 13-year-old is.
Right?
Jonathan
Yes.
Overbay.
Okay.
Jonathan Overbay.
Can you just talk about dealing with a suspect not just the 11-year-old, but the other two being so young. In your personal opinion, is that surprising to you?
11 years old is surprising. I mean, think about it. All of us that have kids in here, think of your 11-year-old out doing this. It is just mind-boggling, number one. And number two, yes, there's a great concern. When this issue came up last year, we knew he was armed. We had very detailed conversations of the fear of the public backlash if we encountered this individual armed and we ended up in an officer-involved shooting with them. I mean, just, there's enough criticism and enough scrutiny at times over officers' use of deadly force. Throw in the emotional background of an 11-year-old armed or not, and it will cause friction within the community, because some people are only going to hear 11-year-old and they're not going to hear violent history and armed with a firearm. And it is very difficult, and very tough decisions were made. And I will tell you, when they were looking for him last year, Deputy Chief Vega was giving me updates every 6 hours about how the investigation was going, and we're getting close. And we kept telling the detectives, do everything you can to safely take this individual into custody. But it is tough on our officers. They're dealing with a kid.
Has this case made you kind of reflect on other cases that may have been hit? When we just had Chuck and GOV a couple of months ago, that was seemingly same circumstances. Has this kind of made you guys take a second look at all those traffic hit runs? There's so many, unfortunately, you guys have to deal with.
There are so many, and that one that you just spoke about, I think we did get an arrest out of it, and we did close that case out. But yeah, they're going to be reviewing and making sure that there's not others that could fit this circumstance. Any other questions? All right, everybody have a good afternoon, and thank you for being here.